Yeah, Spike Lee, Do the Right Thing. Genesis chapter 4, page 9. And it's the story of Cain and Abel. All right. So, yeah, this is something that was on my heart yesterday. And I was like, okay, I'll share whenever I get an opportunity. So here we are. All right, Genesis chapter 4. And we're going to read 1 through 15. Can I get a reader? And whoever reads, just make sure you read with a loud voice, please.
Now Adam had sexual relations with his wife Eve, and she became pregnant. When she gave birth to Cain, she said, "With the Lord's help I have produced a man." Later she gave birth to his brother and named him Abel. When they grew up, Abel became a shepherd while Cain cultivated the ground. When it was time for the harvest, Cain presented some of his crops as a gift to the Lord. Abel also brought a gift, the best portions of the firstborn lambs from his flock. The Lord accepted Abel and his gift, but he did not accept Cain and his gift. This made Cain very angry, and he looked dejected. "Why are you so angry?" the Lord asked Cain. "Why do you look so dejected? You will be accepted if you do what is right, but if you refuse to do what is right, then watch out. Sin is crouching at the door, eager to control you. But you must subdue it and be its master." One day Cain suggested to his brother, "Let's go out to the fields." And while they were in the field, Cain attacked his brother Abel and killed him. Afterward, the Lord asked Cain, "Where is your brother? Where is Abel?" "I don't know," Cain responded. "Am I my brother's guardian?" But the Lord said, "What have you done? Listen, your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground. Now you are cursed and banished from the ground, which has swallowed your brother's blood. No longer will the ground yield good crops for you, no matter how hard you work. From now on, you will be a homeless wanderer on the earth." Cain replied to the Lord, "My punishment is too great for me to bear. You have banished me from the land, and from your presence you have made me a homeless wanderer. Anyone who finds me will kill me." The Lord replied, "No, for I will give a sevenfold punishment to anyone who kills you." Then the Lord put a mark on Cain to warn anyone who might try to kill him. So Cain left the Lord's presence and settled in the land of Nod, east of Eden.
It's a pretty interesting story. So before I share anything, what are y'all thoughts on the story? Any takeaways from the story? What are y'all thoughts? Come on, Zach.
I'm wondering, so Cain and Abel were Adam and Eve's first two sons, right?
Yes.
And so when Cain's and they're the Adam and Eve were the first two people that ever existed. I'm wondering, like, he's like, "Oh, anybody's gonna kill me on the land." Like, who's anybody? Just like animals and stuff, or like there's other humans? No.
Leave it to Zach to open it up. The Bible talks about Adam being in the beginning of God's creation. I'll just say that for the sake of this conversation. But it doesn't tell you that he's the only one, the only person that God created. I believe that the purpose of this story is to track a lineage from the beginning of God's creation all the way to Jesus Christ. The purpose of what's written here is not to give you every detail of everything that was happening at that time. So these chapters don't detail everything that's happening with every person at that time, but more so to track a lineage from the beginning of God's creation to God's chosen people, to Abraham, to God's chosen people, all the way to Jesus Christ. And that's why certain stories are highlighted to highlight certain events in human history. So there's more to be told of why there's other people, because nothing in the Bible tell you that God only created one person.
Okay.
So I hope that helps.
Yeah, it totally helps.
Come on, Justin, and then I'll get you, Jordan.
I was just gonna say, what I got out of it, it just puts me back in frame of mind from last week of your teaching, that we will reap what we sow. And I say that because once God promised him that he wouldn't die, but God didn't promise that he wouldn't have consequences for his actions.
Yeah, that's a fact. Great point. Come on, Jordan.
jealousy has consequences.
That's a fact. That's a fact. Come on, Jeff.
Yeah, I was gonna say what Jordan said there, like, it just shows like extreme, really extreme jealousy, and then like, so when he's asking, like, where's your brother, is he just trying to get him to like admit what he had done because he'd already known?
Yeah.
Is that what he's trying to do?
Mm-hmm. It's like in the beginning when God asked Adam, where are you? I mean, God knows where he at, but these questions is for him to examine himself and realize where he at with things, right? So it's pretty interesting. I got a funny little connection to these questions, but come on, Julie.
Yeah, I was kind of gonna go with what they said. Cain kills the other brother or little brother out of jealousy instead of giving his little brother some praise or like, good job, helping his game. He went out and killed him and tried to take him out like that. And maybe he was thinking, I don't know, maybe next time God, or the Lord comes to him like that, give him the praise or tell him that he's good with his offering and then he'd be okay. But he took him out and the Lord already knew, but he's just trying to see if he can come forward with it. I feel like anyway, and then yeah, that's what I gotta have.
Yeah, that's a good point. Anybody ever here dealt with jealousy before? Jealousy. Yeah. You know what I mean? We know that dealing with jealousy internally, it doesn't lead to anything good, right? Come on, brother.
I was just gonna say,
I got you next, Al.
God knew that jealousy was in Cain's heart. You know, I mean, he created him. So, I mean, I think he kind of did that on purpose just to prove a point to, you know, Cain. Because, I mean, if you follow Cain's story and that's, you know, his lineage grows, you know, his whole family ends up being cursed. And this is like one of the biggest stories in the book that explains, you know, basically character defect, you know, learning about, you know, the personality of a person. So it was one of the biggest stories to me.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's a great point. I like how you connected it to character defects. That's something I wanted to highlight as well. Come on, Alex.
Man, I just like personally like identified like heavily with like even the words like specifically that are used in this passage, just because like I've repeatedly chosen to sin and to just like, you know, just be bad. And it's like, I don't know if it's because I had contact with God previous, I'm on his radar or what, but like when I'm living in sin, like nothing, like there are no crops yielded, like everything is so bad. And
That's a fact.
Bad luck, man. And I mean, just, and wandering I identify so heavily with this.
Great point, man. Greater point about the wandering. I'm grateful you brought that out. That's a great point. Come on, Tanashi.
I love this story too, but I also see how God was being just like a parent, and he asked, "Where's your brother?" I mean, God already knew what had happened, but he just wanted to see if Cain was going to come out and just say the truth, as we do with our children. Children misbehave. But what you just do, you already know what he just did. You're just asking, come on with the truth and be honest, you know. And I can only wonder what would have happened if Cain had just came out and said, I messed up, I killed my brother, I did this and confessed his sins right there. I can only wonder what would have happened.
Yeah. I mean, he probably got free. You know what I'm saying? And that's the thing. Like sometimes it's hard to be honest. I got that here as well. It's hard to be honest, but if we don't be honest, what's behind door number 2? You get what I'm saying? Like, and then sometimes we don't want to be honest because we fear the consequences of who we have to be honest to. Like, for example, this situation. God already knew. God already knows what's in our heart, right? God already knew what it was in his heart. So why was God asking him questions? God was asking him questions so that those questions would help him realize what was in his own heart. It's kind of interesting. Come on, brother. And I want to break a couple things down. Go ahead. Come on, Ryan. Yep.
I just wanted to make note that that's where the war is, in 15, where it says put the mark on Cain. That's where the mark of the beast, that was the mark began, for the mark of the beast.
That's deep. You trying to go deep. Boy, gonna go super deep.
I mean, I've got
Huh?
Sorry. How did he mark Cain?
Curse the ground, he cursed the ground where he could,
He cursed.
or he couldn't farm.
I know it's put down in the footnotes that talk about it, but I was just wondering, how did people know that he was marked?
He couldn't farm.
He couldn't farm.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, he could have had a Chinese symbol on his forehead for all I know, you know what I'm saying? Or he could have had a dark cloud just over his head. I don't know how God marked him, but however he did it, it was evident to everybody to stay away from that man.
Okay.
You know what I mean? That's like sometimes the darkness we carry when we in our allergies, right? When we in our addictions, like it's something about you everybody knows, stay away from you. You get what I'm saying? Like you carry it. It's like you're marked spiritually. It's all good stuff, man. It's all some great stuff that y'all pointed out. Some of the same notes that I had. It's funny when you read this, because it's like I can relate this to addictions and allergies, right? And I want to highlight that it's very important for us going forward in our life that doing the right thing is a priority, right? Not just getting sober, because it's like, you know, sometimes we want to get sober because we want to avoid the consequences of not being sober, right? Our families is destroyed. We don't have good relationships with our children. Our marriage is on the rocks, right? All these different consequences that we want to avoid. And that's good. But you can want to get sober to avoid consequences, but don't really have a strong conviction about doing what's right. Like, it's not important for you to do what's right. You want to get sober so you stay out of trouble, but you don't value doing what's right. And it's evident in here sometimes. Because, like, you don't want to speak up, or you don't want to hold your brother accountable, like, or you don't want to be held accountable, right? Or you complain that you got to be at the program or the group at a certain time, or you complain that you have to say yes to the things that they're asking you to do. A lot of these are symptoms that you have not come to the place where you value doing what's right. Because everything that you're being told is right. Like being on time is right. So why are you complaining about that? Right? Like saying yes to doing service work or things that are pertaining to you being sober is right. Saying yes to helping out or saying yes to cleaning up and doing your zone work, guess what? All of that is right. So if you're complaining about that, if we complain about those things, what does it show us? It shows that we haven't come to a point where we value doing what's right. Okay? I'm saying that because this is what's happening with Cain. Cain offers something to God. Abel offers something to God. God accepts Abel's offering and rejects Cain. Right? What are some of the reasons why he did it? There's several interpretations, but let's just keep it very simple. It was God's will. Right? We could talk about a law of a first fruit. We could talk about it being a lamb sacrificed, and a lamb represents God's creation as opposed to the ground cultivating fruits and vegetables is the work of Cain's hands, and God not accepting his own works, and it had to be the God's work, which we can go down a lot of different paths, but let's just keep it simple. It was God's will. Period. What Abel was doing was God's will, and what Cain was trying to do for God, it wasn't God's will. And this was brought to Abel's attention. This was brought to Cain's attention, and guess what? Cain was struggling with rejection. Right? I guarantee you, if I open up any one of your 4-step, that's on there, right? My dad wasn't there. My mom did this, right? My girl did this. My wife cheated. My brother wasn't there, right? It's on all of our 4-step is somebody that should have did something and they wasn't there for you the way they were supposed to. Rejection. All right. So we got Cain not doing God's will. Now he's dealing with rejection. Okay, what's next? In this rejection and not doing God's will, guess what? He was what? He's disconnected from God. He's disconnected, right? What's the next thing I wanted to point out? Somebody said it. Angry. Or what he has a what? I mean, if you look at this thing sounds like a nightly. You know what I'm saying? Like God is walking Cain through a nightly, like, Cain, why are you angry? It's like the first one on your nightly, right? What's the first question? Was I resentful? Was I angry, right? So God is doing the same thing to Cain. He's like, Cain, why are you angry? Well, God already knows why, but he wanted Cain to do something about his resentment. He's disconnected from God. He's dealing with rejection. He has a resentment in his heart. And now God does a nightly with him and said, Cain, why are you angry? God already knows why he's angry, but he was trying to provoke Cain to do something about his anger before it leads into more ungodliness. He said, why do you look so dejected? What is that? That's like a depressed look. Now, all of this is going on in Cain's heart, right? And God is helping him take an inventory. Hey, why are you angry? Why are you looking so depressed? What's going on with you? What's going on in your heart, Cain? You need to take a look of that. Now, listen what God said. I'm paraphrasing, but listen to the way God said it. He said, why do you look so dejected? You will be accepted if you do what's right. Like, the simple way to fix all of these things is to do the right thing. Doing the right thing will help you accept God's will. And all of these things, you'll overcome them. But if you don't do the right thing in this moment, if you don't deal with that rejection, if you don't deal with the feelings of if you don't deal with being disconnected, if you don't deal with the resentment, if you don't deal with the depression, listen to what God said. God said this is what happens if you don't deal with it. If you refuse to do what is right, then watch out. Sin is crouching at the door, eager to control you. So God let it be bottled up nice and neat in the 12 steps. And we're learning these things in the program. But this wisdom is ancient. God was doing the same thing in the beginning with Cain. He said, Cain, if you don't deal with that resentment right now, sin lieth at the door to control you. You could say, you know what, I'm an introvert and I don't really like to talk like that. You could say, I don't really connect with people in the community, so I'm going to just keep this one to myself. You could say, hey, man, I heard so-and-so gossiping about me, so because he did that, now I'm going to be very careful of what I share. Now you halfway confessing, you halfway dealing with your resentments, you picking and choosing what stuff you want to 10-step and what stuff you don't. But God is saying, if you don't deal with that and do the right thing around it, if you don't do the work around it, guess what? He says sin, but guess what? Your allergy is going to be right there. And it's going to be right there to do what? Control you. You don't do the right thing around that resentment, it's going to be right there to control you. God been saying this thing from the beginning. You don't do the right thing in this moment. You don't do the right thing with this anger. You don't do the right thing with this depression. You don't do the right thing around this sadness. You're disconnected. And if you don't do the right thing around it, that thing gonna be right there to take over and control you. You know why? Because you're powerless against it. That's deep right there, man. Dang, that's deep. All right, let me keep going. Y'all all right so far?
Yes, sir.
What else does this story tell us about Cain? Where was his willingness? He was unwilling. God is even approaching him about it like, come on, bro, let's get this right. God might send staff or send one of your brothers like, bro, what's going on with you? Like, let's get right. Where's his willingness? Cain was unwilling to do what is right. Now God said that the sin is crouching at his door, eager to control you. He said, but you must subdue it and be its master. All right? So, if we do what's right, we can manage whatever's going on in our lives. Right? I'm not necessarily saying that, hey, you're going to be a master of alcohol, but the definition for master is to manage. If we don't manage these things, we know it's going to get out of control and lead us back onto a dark place where we don't want to go down. The tools that we learn, they help us manage. Praying and seeking God to help us manage. Having healthy accountability in our lives, it helps us manage. All right? And then we know the rest of the story. Cain, he didn't do the right thing. He was unwilling to take the correction. He went down a dark path and he killed his brother. He killed his brother out of jealousy. He killed his brother because he had anger and resentment. Now, maybe you're not going to kill your brother, but you might kill your brother in a proverbial way. In other words, without dealing with this stuff, it's going to lead you to harm people that you care about. And that's not the path we want to. We don't want to harm the people that we care about. We don't want to harm our brother, our sister, our parents, our mothers, our fathers, our children, or our spouses. One of the other things I wanted to point out is that, and it was said that he went into a wilderness wandering. Marked. Everybody stayed away from him. And I thought that was so interesting that if we don't do the right thing with what's going on with us, this is a perfect example of where it can lead us down. Back into the wilderness. Isolation. Wandering. Struggling. With no help. No real solutions. Right? Like, yeah, you got a GPS and your GPS says turn here when you're going to work. So you're not wandering in the sense of being literally lost, but you wandering in your resentment. Like you're wandering in anger. You get what I'm saying? Like you lost your way. Like you can't see past what's happening. Like you've made this small thing into a huge thing, a big idol where there's no God in it and there's no direction and you have no way of getting out of it. He's wandering. But there is a solution. Just do the right thing. Do the right thing when people expect you to do it. Do the right thing when you're in front of everybody. Do the right thing when nobody expects you to do it. Do the right thing when nobody's around. Prioritize doing the right thing. The Bible says, seek first the kingdom and its righteousness, and everything else will fall into place. So we preach to you, hey, man, put God first, man. Seek God. Be spiritually fit. Give it over to God. Like, give it to God. Give it to God. Give it to God. Give it to God. Right? Amazing. But Jesus said, give it to God and focus on what's doing what's right. Both things. Like, I'm going to give it to God, but it's not important to you to do what's right? No, you know what? I'm going to just give it to God. But do you care about doing the right things too? Jesus says, seek first the kingdom and what's right. They both have to be a priority, and then everything else fall into place. Now, I'm not trying to get you to be a superstar Christian going out saving souls and kicking butt and taking names. But you could start by just doing your nightly, and that's doing what's right. You could start by just the basic things that we're learning here, because it's the right thing. Derek, what happened when you stopped caring about doing the right thing? Amen. That's a fact. Anybody else know that? Who else on a relax? I'm not trying to shame you. But what happened when you stopped doing the right thing? You had that Cain mark on you, right? Wandering in the wilderness. And some of y'all are like, I don't need to raise my hand, but you were struggling too. You might not have went back all the way, but you were struggling in red. Mental obsession. You just didn't do it, but you still were struggling. You get what I'm saying? So we gotta keep it. We gotta make it important to do what's right. Now, when we talk about, and I'll finish this, and then I'll let you guys chime in for a couple minutes. When we talking about doing what's right, first thing I want you to think about is doing what's right by God. You know, I want to turn my will over to God, right? I want to turn my will over to God. And it's like the main focus of that in treatment is like turning your will over, as far as stop trying to self-will getting sober. It's like, that's what we're thinking of. It's like, I'm going to turn my will over to God. Like, I've been trying so hard to stay clean. I just got to let God do it for me. But that's not just all that's talking about. Turning your will over to God means sometimes you're going to have to do the right thing when everybody else around you doing the wrong thing. Like turning your will over to God and doing the right thing means that you might have to say something about one of the clients sneaking drugs in here, and everybody else don't want to say anything, but it's the right thing to do. I'm not saying that's happening now, but that's happened here more than one time. It's happened when nobody wanted to say nothing and we knew. And it's happened when people didn't want to say anything. And a couple guys came and said, Maurice, we got to do the right thing. And I was proud of them. I was proud of them for doing the right thing. You know what I'm saying? It has to be important. Like, it has to be important. Oh man, I got to pull my brother up, man. Like, somebody give me some pull-ups. No, it got to be important to do the right thing. Hey, bro, man, I love you, but look, you showing up bad, bro. Like, when you show up bad, I'm afraid. It's life or death. You get what I'm saying? Like, it's because we got to make it important doing the right thing. My brother Gavin died. He left a month from here and he died. I blame shifted. I had a resentment. I blamed everybody. I blamed him. I blame Stonegate. I blame myself. I blame the people that was in the sober living. Why didn't anybody check up on them? I blamed everybody at first, but then I had to do the work around it. And what I came to the realization is, if I make you mad for telling you the truth, but it keep you alive, that's what I'm willing to do. I just have to suffer you being mad at me for a week. Like, we'll make up eventually. Like, but if you alive, that's more important. Because the brother Gavin, like, we would hold him accountable, and sometimes he would go into this long thing, bro, and make all these reasons, and it's like, he could kind of convince you that his reason is like a good thing. So it kind of like, when you want to hold him accountable, you might second guess him, like, you know what, I ain't gonna say nothing. I would feel like that sometimes. I'm like, you know what, I should say something to him, but you know what, I ain't even gonna say nothing. Like, because it was always like a back and forth, not always, but sometimes it was a back and forth. So I blame myself, because I felt like before he left, it's certain things that I prayed about, but I should have said something to him, but I didn't. I seen eagles starting to grow on him before he left. And I wanted to say something, and I should have said something, but I didn't. Hey, I love every one of y'all, but if I got to say something, I'm going to say it. Because I prioritize doing the right thing. All right? Do the right thing by God. What is the prayer? We're praying only the knowledge of his will and what he wants us to do, right? However that look in your life, we have to prioritize doing the right thing by God. Number 2, do the right thing by others. Right? Our core values, and we learn here, walk in love, right? Practice grace and tolerance, right? Walking in love. That's just not a treatment thing. That's a God thing. That's a Jesus Christ thing, right? Jesus, his number 1 commandment was walk in love, right? So walking in love for your brother, right? Holding your brother accountable in love. Encouraging your brother, being a present help, like, right? Helping each other out. Number 3, do the right thing. Honesty. Living an honest life is doing the right thing. Being honest about your shortcomings, right? Being honest about your disobedience to God, right? The Bible says if you sin, go to God and confess it. What is it telling you? Be honest. God knew you sin already, but you got to be honest, right? Being honest about how you feel today, right? Being honest about how you feel about how Richard's showing up, whatever. I just use that as an example. Like honesty, man. Right? Because if we don't do the right thing and be honest, what's behind door number 2? And the 4th thing, and then I'll open up for y'all to share for a couple minutes, maybe 2 minutes, is serving. Being a servant and serving others is the right thing to do. Anybody got any